will now call the meeting to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Member Jarrell? Here. Member Espericueta?
Here.
Member Girardi?
Here.
Board President Cornett?
Here.
And currently Vice President Irvin is absent.
Item 2, members of the audience may at this time address the Board of Education regarding only matters of the closed session and study session items. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the Board of Education? Not seeing any, we'll go ahead and start with our study session, expanding local vendor participation, supplier diversity, and community partnership opportunities, OE-6.2.
So Board President Cornett, Board, I'd like to open up here and provide just a little bit of context about what we have for you tonight and why we thought it'd be very beneficial to have council here with us. As a board, you brought to us some questions about supplier diversity, expanding our vendor partnerships and participation, and even our local community opportunities. And there were a number of questions, probably about 10 of them, asking the district to take a look at how do we incorporate these concepts into what we do for procurement. With that being said, Celine put together a presentation for us to go through based on those questions, and we also asked legal counsel to be here so that we are abiding by our laws and making sure that we do things the right way. So there might be some questions that come up that we may not be able to answer as a district, but we have legal counsel on hand to help us with that as well. And what we hope to accomplish here too, as we move forward with direction from the board, is to begin looking at the things that we can do and maybe start putting a timeline to some of those things with board direction. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Jeff to cue us up.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Funches. We do have a couple people here. This is our purchasing director, Celine Ahumada Tirado. She's the one that created this presentation for us, and kind of the one pager that you can leave here with to know the rules of competition and fairness and legal requirements. She's going to go over this step by step and let you know kind of what the laws and rules are, but then also give you an idea of what we can do as a district. And then we also have here Meredith Brown from AALR. Two R's there, right? She has happily joined us today to kind of answer any further questions that maybe Celine is not able to answer, or that just from a legal perspective where we can land. So she's here to give us the right answers to questions that may be asked from the board or us. So go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much. So as it was said before, the purpose of this presentation was to kind of give the board an idea of what we currently do, what we're able to do, and also highlight some of the restrictions upon us regarding ed code, regarding procurement law, and just have a good conversation. So as it was mentioned, we got a list of about 10 questions, 10 suggestions that we could implement, and this particular presentation was made to address each one of those. So the first one we received was a small business vendor acceleration program. The way these slides are formatted, I will highlight some of the restrictions we have, and then we will talk about some of the things that we're currently implementing or that we could implement. So as far as our small business vendor acceleration program, some of the restrictions that we have is that every vendor education effort has to remain neutral. We have to be transparent with the public, and it needs to be equally accessible to all business. This is not something that we can say that is limited just to certain local businesses. We have to make it available to everybody. So we also, let's just say that there's a bid or some contract that's coming up. We cannot provide bid-specific guidance that could create an unfair competitive advantage. Now, that being said, We do support our vendors because we do provide general procurement information. We are able to, if directed, create procurement workshops or information sessions with them. Usually when we have large contracts such as bids, we do have pre-bid meetings where we sit down with all the vendors that are going to participate and we let them know exactly what we're looking for, let them ask their questions, just so everyone's on the level playing field. I believe that our facilities team also does this when we have construction projects. We have pre-bid meetings. We have job walks where we're able to, everybody who wants to come in and ask questions or receive additional information, it's on a level playing field again. It's transparent. We have documentation that this was provided. So we can also, again, we can develop more vendor guides. We can do frequently asked questions, instruction materials. We can maintain a vendor reach out list, excuse me, vendor outreach list to improve communications. So maybe currently we have something similar to this with our CUPCA, which is our contractors. We ask them if you'd like to come and participate, you can come and sign up. And that is available on our district website. And so anybody who wants to can come and sign up. But again, if there's any suggestion from the board on how we can improve these or anything that you would like to see, we would welcome that. Yes. So we don't have in-depth guides, but when we do have project-specific trainings that we do.
Just one clarifying question. I apologize.
Yes.
So for the procurement workshops, about how many do we do annually?
This past year, we did 2. One of them that we did was we had a large contract for our fleet. So one of the big things that we wanted to include as many vendors, our copier fleet. So what we ended up doing is we reached out, we told them we were going to have a pre-bid meeting. We had everybody come in, we explained what the situation was, what we were looking for. If they had any questions about whether, I know a couple of them are like, can we partner up with other vendors and provide this to you? We said yes. So again, we provide this on a project-specific situation. All of our contract with our current modernizations with our construction team, that's exactly what we do. We do a job walk, which is like a pre-bid meeting. We meet with all the vendors that are interested. We put it on the newspaper. We say we're going to have this job walk if anybody wants to come and take a look. And then we have a Q&A session right there at the site.
Is there a link on the website?
Yes.
So, if you can't make the meeting, you have this link to help you understand the process.
Well, because these are project specific, because we want people to participate and have all of the information, we make those mandatory. So we say, if you want to participate in this project, you have to be in this meeting because we're going to answer all your questions. It prevents us from issuing some kind of contract and then the vendor coming back and saying, well, I didn't know that was what you meant. So we provide them the opportunity to tell us up front, what is it you have questions with? And, do you see any issues with how we're presenting this? Do you feel, and in some cases they do tell us, well, I feel like you're giving an unfair advantage to XYZ because they can do this or they've been doing this or they only have the contract for this. And in the event that something like that happens, we do go back, review the scope and make sure that it's fair to everybody and we're not gearing it toward one company or the other.
Celine, can you clarify to the board what you meant by CUPCA and the
No.
Ranges in which we would have the CUPCA list for? Because beyond a certain threshold, we would have formal bidding.
We have our CUPCA list, which is for construction, and those are updated every year. So let me pull that up to make sure I give you the full information on that. But essentially what a CUPCA list is, we have a list of contractors that have already submitted their qualifications, be that their years of experience, be that their licenses. And in order for us to proceed, because we are a government entity, we do have limits as to when we need to go out and do a competitive bid and when we can issue these small contracts. So,
which is basically called an informal bid.
Yes.
So we pull from this list of, if we need an electrician, for example, and the threshold was, I believe it's 75,000 now to
yes.
210, is it?
To 220.
220. So then we would pull from that list and email just that list in an informal bid. A formal bid is after 1 million.
Yeah.
Then we would do a formal bid for,
And we will do it for
over the 220 or 210. Yeah, that's when you would do a formal bid for those public works projects. But below that $75,000 threshold, Do we keep a vendor list below that
We
as
use our
well?
CUPCA list for that, and that's why we encourage all of our contractors to sign up for the CUPCA. Because let's just say that we want a project and we've never had to do that before. We reference the CUPCA list, they've signed up with us, we know they have everything they need, so we would, anybody who, let's just say it's a specific electrical issue, we would send out something to all of our electricians listed on the CUPCA list, and they were able to either say, yeah, I want to participate, here's what I bid for the project, or, at the same time, they could say, that's not something I'm interested in.
And any vendor, any local vendor or otherwise can sign up for the CUPCA. It's free to sign up.
Yes, it's completely
what's
free
the
to sign
company
up.
that we use?
We use, no, we used to use Planet Bids, right now we use Quality Bidders.
Quality Bidders, that's right.
Yes. And all of these links, by the way, are accessible on our website. We issue these to all our vendors. It's a simple link. It's not a hyperlink. It's psusd.us/purchasing/bids. And even if they put just /purchasing, they'll be able to sign up for the CUPCA list. We try and make this as simple as possible so that they're able to have access and they're not kind of lost navigating our world here.
And all what she was just talking about, the CUPCA projects and whatnot, it's all public works projects and construction and whatnot. I realize there's other services out there, similar to what we use for like the ELOP programs and whatnot, where there's much smaller vendors for, art or piano lessons and things like that, we also contract with.
And on top of that, we also have our OpenGov, which is how we do our bids, and that is also available to the public. It is under part of our portal. Essentially, it's very free for them to go in there, sign up. Any kind of project that we issue, they'll get a notification. It'll tell them, let's just say that we're looking for vehicles. It'll send out a notification to anybody who signed up under OpenGov. Whether or not they're on the CUPCA list, it'll send them a notification, and they'll be able to receive that. So I understand that CUPCA is for construction, but we also have this available for any vendor that provides any other kind of other service as well.
I didn't get your name. Meredith Brown. Meredith, and are you here on?
Yeah, she's our legal counsel.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
She's a legal counsel for the district? Great, nice to meet you. Yeah, so for number one, so the district is doing these things, and I guess I'll go back. When it comes to one, what was the prompts and the information that you got that you weren't able to do? Do you have that available, or can we see what was available, what was given? And also, the district is already doing these things that you have listed here?
Yes.
So are those anywhere close to any of the items that you received for the number one from the list of the items that we talked about with the 10?
So I know that you submitted some lists of, let's see, vendor outreach was a big one, and I believe vendor training was a big one. And so what I compiled here is essentially what we can do. And if you give me a minute.
So with the vendor outreach and educational programs, are we doing any type of training for this? And from a legal standpoint, I guess I hear what you're saying, that we can't specifically say who we're targeting or anything like that. But is there any way that we can have some sort of verbiage to where we can kind of get to the point and not get over the point of leading someone to believe that that is what we're doing?
So what we currently have is, what I saw in here is like, what we currently have is we have bits and pieces of this program that you would like us to do. We haven't put together let's just say, onboarding program for our vendors. In the event that that is the directive that we are going to be receiving, that you would like us to have an onboarding workshop or,
Is that in one?
yes.
Okay, so the onboarding is in one. Do you have that anywhere to where we can see what that looks like?
So you want a sample of what it would look like?
No, what I'm saying is, it's saying that the Small Business Vendor Accelerated Program cannot be done, but what was the prompt that you had that led you to that point to say that it can't be done? That's the question. I want to see what that looks like so we're able to see, I know that you're saying that we cannot do it, but what on that list can we do?
Are you referring to the original question that was posed by the board?
Yes,
Okay. You have that list
Yes,
that
I'm
this was
pulling it up right
comprised
now.
from?
but just, and if you can just give it one at a time, so when we deal with one, if we can see what that is,
Okay.
and then we can
State the
kind of,
entire request first and then go over
yeah, and
number
then,
one?
and then we
Okay.
actually can see what lines up and what
Gotcha.
we cannot and can do, and if there's any way that we can, some sort of way of get maybe the meat and bones of some of that maybe possible.
Yes, she's designed her presentation around the 10 questions that were posed by the board. And then, yes, she's planning to discuss what's, what the law is around it and then what we are doing and what is possible to do.
Yeah. But it sounds like from one, what I heard so far is initially what we cannot do and what we're already doing. I haven't heard anything saying,
Well, one of the things, can you go to the next slide? So one of the things she mentioned that we haven't really dived too deep into, well, she mentioned we have specific workshops for specific bidding, not so much as a generalized workshop. And then she also mentioned that we do not have vendor guides or FAQs developed at this particular point, but we do maintain outreach lists through the, at least for construction procurement and other procurements, but through the two
So,
companies
yes.
that we use.
So having the list here in front of me, so one of the things that was specifically listed on here is that you would like a support program to help local small businesses. And the issue that we have with that is that any kind of training and support program we have has to be open to all businesses.
well, I mean, so if that's the case, then make it available to all businesses. But I guess what I'm saying is, as long as it's available, but I want to be intentional about getting to our local businesses. So if it is available for everyone, fine, make it available for everyone. But also, we want to be intentional about what we want to do for our local vendors. And that's the standpoint of this entire item and different things like that. We want to be intentional to help our local businesses, and that's what this whole thing is about. So getting the response and the prompts, this first one seems like we haven't talked of anything that we can do different than what we are doing to help lower those barriers, to allow those local businesses and those women-led businesses, Black-owned businesses, those different things. We haven't said anything so far. I don't know if it's later on down the slide or not, but here so far in one, I haven't heard you speak of anything that we're looking to do besides what we are already doing.
And I would defer to council on this one because, again, the restriction that we have here in procurement is that we are not allowed to differentiate between small business, large business, women-owned. And to a certain degree, some of the laws that overlap discourage us doing that. Because ultimately what they want us to do is put it out there and have everyone look at it, and then if they can provide the information, then they can come back. I understand that we would like to have some targeted outreach for our local businesses, and we can probably work with communications to talk to our Chamber of Commerce, do something like that. But I don't know if there's anything specific that we could do that would target these small local entities without some other company coming back and claiming that we are giving them preferential treatment.
So could we do something along the lines of training them to get to that point. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to necessarily give them the contract. But what I'm saying is the training, the different aspects to making it available for them to have the opportunity to know that it's available for them, to give them a chance to compete. Because if they're not on a level of knowing that they can compete or having the training possible, they're not. It's not what we're looking for. It's not what we're trying to get to.
So what public agencies can do is the outreach can mean that there are forums or that there are broadly open public meetings that explain what it is that explain general bidding. There can be targeted outreach in terms of advertising in different languages, advertising in different neighborhoods, as long as it's a broad-based appeal and anyone can attend, you can make sure that your pool is bigger. So that can be done. There is a section in 2002 of the California Public Contract Code that allows there to be some support or some particular, it's actually a vendor preference. I think it's 2002. I think I brought the statute with me of the Public Contract Code that allows, there it is. It's the, it defines responsive bidders, and it allows local agencies to set a percentage for their small businesses. The small businesses are aligned with the government guidelines because the U.S. government has a small business section of the Department of Commerce that promotes small businesses. So there are things that could be done, but mostly it is in terms of getting the information out, and then if you have the training, it's open to everybody, but you want to make sure that everybody can access the training. What oftentimes happens is, for instance, with the vendor list, the vendor pre-qualification list that we do through the California Public Construction Act, which is CUPCA, Uniform Public Construction Act. That's where the acronyms come from. You have to send it out to all the trade journals. So what that is sort of an example of how the state legislature has come up with a protocol, a set of guidelines that make sure that you get all the trades involved. Well, as a district, you're already communicating with all aspects of your community. You just channel the invitations to attend those workshops that you're already having, and through the different outlets that you have as a district. And so the community groups will then learn that they could come, and if they have a business that they want to, and they want to learn about how to make a bid. Now, what it was on the first slide was you can't have a bid specific. In other words, you can't, or training, you can't sit down and show someone how to fill out a bid for that particular competitive bid or informal bid. But what you can do is discuss overall what bidding is, and for businesses that may only do business with other private entities or person to person, you could explain what competitive bidding is. So you do have a structure already that you can build on that as a district that with your LCAP, you're already going out and getting parent communication. You're already going out and getting your community engaged in what you're doing in terms of delivering education. You could use those same outlets to get people to come to the trainings that you already have. So
I'm a little confused in what we're doing and what we're not doing up here. But it seems to me this addresses your concerns, Charlie, because it's providing some workshops for all businesses out there and informational systems. The bottom line is to find outreach list, and improve communications. So if we did a general session, you advertise. I heard the Chamber of Commerce. That's a great one. The Building Industry Association. Get it out to those guys and let those contractors know, hey, we're having this informational system session. If you want to get in on bidding on a school district project, show up for this. So I think this first slide is, in a way, I think it's addressing what you're trying to get at. I don't know if you see it the same way, but that's how I see it.
Well, first of all, it's kind of what the board wants to do. It's not me in general. And so that's a clarification there. Secondly, it's fine to hear you say that, but it's another thing to see it up there. Like, you're speaking of those things that you're talking about, but you don't, they're not saying that we're continuing or we're going to do this or we're adding on to this. It's not any of that. These are the things that we're doing already. And so I guess that's where my issue or my concern comes in, is that we're here to try to do better and get more. I mean, if we do have that set in place and have that put in place, it's great. You're right. It's a great framework. But now it's time to work it. It's time to push it further, and that's why we're here. We're not here to say that we don't have it in place, and since we don't have it in place, that we're creating something new. Well, we have it in place. You're right. But how are we working it? How are we advancing it? How are we making it better? That's the reason. That's the question.
Isn't that why we're here?
Right.
Target audience we want to get to.
And as you go through your presentation and we see what is in place, then we have the opportunity, I assume, to make suggestions how we can improve it within the law.
Of course.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So, and I think that is the point of this presentation, is to get more direction from the board and hear from the board as to what you would like. Like she pointed out, we do specific workshops, but not necessarily generalized workshops, as Ms. Brown spoke about, that we could do if that is something the board would really like to see us do. Also, there's a such thing as vendor guides. So she's trying to give you suggestions of things that we could do and see if that's what you want to see us develop a little bit further. The vendor guides and FAQs right now is pretty limited to specific projects, but we could develop one that's more general for and more specific to the different types of projects that we do and how to, find forms and find our website and what's on there and so forth. And then as far as the outreach lists, we do already have them in place for certain thresholds and above. But if we would like to keep one and we use those even for the lower thresholds and below, but that's mostly public works, we can figure out a way to continue vendor lists for local vendors, for any vendor that wants to be on a particular list for maybe the smaller projects as well. So I don't think this is, yes, the first slide was sort of telling you the law in each one of these that she'll step through is number 2, number 3, and through 10. It'll kind of be the same format. And then what we are doing and what we can do and what the board's recommendations are, yes, we would like to see that sort of thing, and that will encourage the purchasing department to move in that direction.
So can we go ahead with the presentation?
Of course. So we already talked about, we skipped a couple slides. We already talked a little about first-time vendor support. As we mentioned before, the limitations that we have is that it has to be open to everyone. It has to be transparent.
Celine, can you read the number 2, the question first, and then
Of
go
course.
over what we're doing here?
So the second question submitted was first-time vendor support initiative. Establish quarterly workshops and office hours for new vendors, along with simplified guides, templates, and mentorship opportunities for first-time applicants navigating the district procurement system. And so, excuse me, as I mentioned, this is, we have created some workshops before. That's probably something that we could look into expanding, as was mentioned.
Excuse me, Celine, really quick.
Yes.
Can anyone get John a copy? I don't think he has a copy.
I've been taking notes. I'm good.
There you go.
All right, go ahead. You can continue.
So we were talking about establishing workshops and office hours for new vendors. As we mentioned, anything that we provide has to be open to the public. We can't limit it to a specific subset of vendors. So if anything ever happens that makes us look like we're, we're experiencing favoritism or we're favoring one over the other, that really limits our options for one-on-one training of just sitting with a company and saying, this is how you do it. But we can offer, we're not currently doing this, but we can offer onboarding sessions and like how to do business with PSUSD presentations, and make that like an open house kind of situation. We've done that with our Reaper department. We do like a how to do business here. And so it would just be a matter of taking that template, making that public. What I like to do with a lot of my presentations is we record them and then we have them on our portal, so that if anybody wasn't able to make it, they're able to go and reference that, and they'll give them step-by-step information. And again, this just making it accessible to everybody. It could be that it has a higher impact on our local vendors, but at the same time, we're not caught in a situation where we're favoring one over the other. Another thing is, we can create standardized templates or checklists. We've already done this with some of our bids. However, if there's complicated, procedures, we can always look at that and see how we can simplify it. It's an ongoing process. We do this every year. We meet with our departments and we say, what are the red tapes that you've seen? And so we can include this as part of our analysis that we do every year. And another thing is, if we have to have some kind of procedural points of how does a vendor get in contact with us? What if there's a question? And make that more open and available. We currently have a email address that is purchasinginfo@PSUSD that is monitored by my staff. So anybody that has that and can ask a question, be it from inside the district or outside, and we're able to monitor relationships that way. We have gotten a couple new vendors this way. We have gotten a couple of teachers that reference their vendors to come and set up with us, and so we walk them through the process. So again, this is, if there's any kind of suggestion from the board that's something else you would like to see, or maybe a gap that you see, we would also appreciate any kind of feedback on that.
My question is, how do you define a vendor? Because I have met vendors at after-school carnivals and spoken to vendors who said they were not allowed to sell in afternoon carnivals because they needed $1 million insurance, they needed to be fingerprinted, and they needed one more thing. And so a vendor is someone that's a formal person with a contract, or a vendor is like a whole encompassing
So
person?
the way we treat our vendors here internally at PSUSD, we have a vendor application. So at the very least, they need a W-9 to show that they are doing their taxes. And then we request, depending on what the vendor is, if it's going to be in contact with the kids. Unfortunately, new law came to being that if you are in the vicinity of any child, you need that sexual molestation insurance. You do need to be fingerprinted. It's a lot. And I understand that, and I've spoken with a lot of like small-time vendors, mom and pop shops that, they just have they're out of the garage, they're working. A lot of the times we tell them, like, well, try to incorporate that into, the billing and see if, you can make it up that way. But it's gotten very difficult this past couple of years because we have, for example, teachers that want to use these vendors that, they can provide finger painting classes. It's $200. The contract is not that big. They're just doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. But because of the way the laws of California are structured, they have to be fingerprinted. They have to have that certificate or insurance. It's a lot. It's a big ask. And so I do understand when a couple of vendors say, I can't do business with you, because it's a big ask that we're asking them.
Who monitors the accountability of those vendors that have not done that?
Well, currently, we're not allowing them to enter. The only exceptions we've had is if it's something that's like an emergency, or, I don't want the school sites to not offer programs. And so we've negotiated the contract with them, but usually these are hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so we negotiate with them. We tell them you have to be monitored, you have to be someone there present. We try and be flexible with some of our smaller vendors this way. It's just the way the laws are structured right now, at the very minimum, we need a DOJ.
Yeah, I see all the vendors, and I don't see that, perhaps, I don't know, but that they went through all those steps to just sell popcorn and nachos at the fair at Cielo Vista. And I
Yeah.
don't ask, that's not.
And if they have a vehicle, we need vehicle insurance. I mean, it's a big ask when we have vendors on campus. It's a little easier for vendors that are just delivering items to us. Let's just say it's school supplies or books. It's a little easier for them because they can just ship it. But yeah, when we have vendors that are providing services on campus, there's a lot more requirements that way. And unfortunately, it does filter out a lot of the smaller businesses because they can't afford $1 million just for a single event.
I, yeah, maybe it would be for legal advice. I know that maybe part of the reason that this requirement is because the money is a mixing, but came from the state, from the entire taxes from the whole resident California and also federal money. But what about the money came from bonds, for example, that is to build new schools, to upgrade the schools, fee for construction in the region, in the local donation. You know, not the whole money came from the state in general and from the federal. But the regulation apply for any kind of money that's.
Well, the regulations regarding the Department of Justice fingerprint check is, it's
For the
Ed
student,
code requirement for any contractor that's going to be working with children.
When children, yeah.
But what can happen with the vendors is you could have, like, if someone is, oftentimes they've already got the Department of Justice fingerprint check. But say if you're going to be doing janitorial service, or you're going to be doing, you would have that if you're going to be in the school building. If you're going to be doing landscape, a lot of the smaller construction is if you're doing something like fencing or landscape, something that's not part of a bigger project. And oftentimes they do have the insurance and the fingerprinting. They just haven't. If they're doing the construction, you don't have to. You could put a barrier between yourself and the kids. It doesn't necessarily have to be like if you're working in the classroom. So there are ways to have more access for local businesses or the people who support the bonds, who are the small business, who are the parents and the families of the kids that are going to school here. That is something that a lot of districts are working on. Everyone wants the taxpayers to be able to benefit from what's developing, and oftentimes what they do is they try and make sure that they get the information out. How do you bid? And if there's a small project, that a small business could take, there's a vendor list, a pre-qualified vendor list, which is, I think, what your purchasing has, and they make sure they could call those people. So there's ways to make sure that you're including the people who are paying the taxes and supporting the school in the commerce that's generated by the school. I mean, I understand that's the idea, and a lot of school districts can make that happen.
Yeah, and in regards to bond projects, those are usually pretty major formal bid projects that you have to follow public works rules for, being the fact it's local or state or federal, doesn't matter. You still have to follow the public works rules and laws. And so, but to sort of address your point for some of those vendors, Madonna, sometimes when you see those vendors, and we are working on this, they're hired by the Booster Club or ASB, and we do trainings every year with these booster clubs and ASBs and tell them that we need to review those contracts and make sure that they have the proper insurance to be on our campuses and so forth. But that's not to say that some aren't slipped in there, if you will, through the booster clubs and whatnot. So that might be some of those vendors that you might be seeing, and we are working to clean that up as well. So. It's tied to a certain degree where we do have to do the fingerprinting and stuff. If it's just like a one-person vendor or for some small event like that, we do have ways that we can do a contract and work around some of the insurance requirements and stuff. Specifically, we say that a staff member will be with you at all times and so forth and things like that. So we can work with them on those sort of things, but they still have to go through DOJ, which we actually do supply here in the HR department as well. So we can even help them out with that sort of thing. But it is a matter of, yes, we do keep it pretty tight in that regards.
And just, I will say, we don't make a habit of just rejecting vendors just because they don't have the full packet. We always try to work with them. We always try to look at their history, if they've done business with us for years. I mean, it's not just a yes or no, especially on some of these smaller vendors that have done business with us for sometimes decades. We always look at, the risks that are involved, the liabilities, like the benefits. And I can say that as of this year, I think I've only ever rejected 2. And that's because there were some egregious, lack of documentation. But it's never been you don't have the insurance, you can't work here anymore.
If I can recommend, go ahead.
Yes.
I was just going to say, we have like 10 of these to go through. So,
yeah.
And some of these might be answering your questions
Yes.
and giving us feedback as we move along.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
With that with that $1 million policy or whatever they have to have, what does that typically cost in a small business?
I don't have the dollar amount of that. It depends on the insurance companies. I would say that we were instructed that we cannot funnel them towards specific insurance companies. That being said, I understand that we tell them to shop around because there are some companies that are cheaper than others. But I would I've spoken with risk management about this. I would like to have maybe a preferred list, but I believe that would be.
Our risk management does require them to have a particular
Yes.
rating, though.
Yes.
So,
Do you have any idea?
It's usually like a couple of $100 on $100,000. It's like a small percentage.
Okay.
Yeah, especially with when you're doing construction with the performance and the payment bonds, it's not that much. They kick and scream, the contractors kick and scream, but it's not that much, and it protects them and it protects the district, and they build it into their bid.
I was going to say they typically would build that into their price. So.
And I think that could be something also because I guess as a small business, you'll see $1 million and you'll believe that you have to have half of that or some idea. If there was an idea, a general idea of, hey, it's maybe a few $100s on 100,000, I think that could lower a little bit of the fear of, having to buy that insurance. That's another way of lowering the barrier.
Or riders on their homeowners insurance. I mean, there's ways that smaller, particularly if you have someone that's doing curriculum or they're writing curriculum and they're doing some sort of academic thing, those are usually your teachers or retired the administrators, and they're usually providing these services as consultants, and they're writers on their homeowners. A lot of businesses are able to make themselves, get access, make themselves competitive without having such a big burden.
I'm doing it as well. You need to share the microphone because this is live actually.
Okay. All right. So when we talked about contract structuring, number 3 was review opportunities to break large contracts into smaller scopes or regional bids where feasible, allowing more participation from small and emerging local businesses. So this kind of collides with a rule that we have and laws that we have in purchasing where we cannot break a large contract, especially if it looks like we're doing that to avoid a bid. So it's called bid splitting, and our legal will tell you that's a big no-no. That being said, if we have too many fragmentations, if we have one company here that, for example, the example that I gave everybody is like everybody can buy a laptop from a lot of different places. But if we need 1,000 of them, breaking that up into a bunch of little pieces is going to, first of all, cause delays because we don't know if everyone has it in stock. It's going to cause a lot of admin work, making sure that everyone gets what they need when they need it. So again, it's not that it's impossible. It's that may create more delays on the admin side, especially on our school sites, if they have to keep track of 5 different shipments instead of the one. But that being said, there are certain grants and public resources that we receive that require us to go with one vendor. So again, this limits our options on what we can do. However, we do want to make sure that we offer reasonable opportunities for smaller vendors. I understand that we can buy toner from Office Depot all the time, but one of the things that we've done, for example, for toner, is that we've reached out to smaller firms that are able to provide, and so we have currently about 4 of them that have pretty competitive pricing and that we bounce off each other and that we supply the district with. If someone else were able to, come in and say, hey, I want to do business with you, again, that's one of the things that we analyze. Are you competitive? Are you responsive? And so we are always looking to diversify and not just get everything from like a sole source.
Are any of those companies local?
One of them is in San Dimas, so I guess it depends on the definition of local.
No.
We also encourage subcontracting opportunities for our larger projects. We currently have, we completely revamped the equipment in the print shop. And one of the things that we told the companies when we were doing the job walk is, if you can partner up with a smaller detailed vendor that is very specific to this request that we're asking for, and they're not here presently, you are allowed to bid. That is allowed. You can bid under your name and then just subcontract the work. And I believe we had that. We had, for our scanning project, the same thing. Canon partnered with Viatron, and Viatron has local offices here that were able to provide that scanning. So even though everything, the contract was awarded to Canon, Canon subcontracted with a local company to help us do our scanning. And it was the same thing with our equipment. Some people are really good at finishing equipment. Some people are really good at printers. Our print finishing solutions partnered up with Kyocera, partnered up with Canon, and so we got a good selection of vendors there. Print finishing solutions is a small business. They are located in Anaheim, so again, not necessarily local. But we do open this up as opportunities, and we strategize with our vendors of like, if you can provide the best by partnering with someone else, we 100% will allow that. And again, we're always open if you feel that there's something we're missing. If you're evaluating our strategies and you're like, I feel like you see some gaps, we're open to any kind of suggestion that you might have. Because again, this is for us here in purchasing. We're always looking to improve. And like I said, every year we look back at the year and see where we went wrong, where we went right, and what we can improve.
Something to keep in mind, she's been talking a lot about larger bids and formal bidding and informal bidding and whatnot. I mean, if it's a lower threshold, then we just go out for quotes, and you can pick the local vendors and whatnot. That are responsive and do good work. The board policy is what is it, 2 quotes that you're able to get for some of these smaller projects and whatnot. So that's where we see a lot of smaller vendors come into play with those smaller amounts. But if you're talking larger projects, then we have to follow certain procurement rules and whatnot. So we do work with a lot of local vendors on the smaller type of projects.
And so maybe something that we could possibly add in there is, if there is maybe 2 or 3 contracts that we've done, maybe we can see that improve by a certain percentage each year. That way we can have something that we're shooting for and something that we're doing a little bit intentional. And I think that could be something that we can add on to that list, is always trying to be intentional. And I think that's what I'm trying to drive home the most is, I agree that, Anaheim is somewhere in California. These different companies are in California, but I'm trying to make a difference for our local businesses. And as we continue to sit here and look at Palm Springs Unified School District, and we have our socially economic challenged families, and we stay at about 92%. We have a lot of families that are here in our district that are small businesses. And that number of offering some of these accounts to some of our local business could do more than just, help us here out at the district. It could grow our economy. It could we're dealing with over a $400 million budget. It gives us an opportunity. We are one of probably the biggest player in each one of these cities that we represent. And I just want us to be intentional with changing that. Every year, year after year, I continue to see that number around 90%. That means our students' parents and people here in the Coachella Valley are, they're low income. And so, they have businesses, and I just want to make sure that we're trying to lower the barrier to be able to get those and be intentional about it. And so I know that we're doing great work. Of course, it's great. We're always doing great work here at the district, but there's always a chance to be intentional about it. And that's the whole purpose of this. And I'll let you flow through the presentation.
Yeah.
But I just want us to be intentional.
So I think the mechanism for increasing the participation of the small businesses, you may want to consider the small business preference. That's where you get the subcontractors. That's permissible under the Public Contract Code, and it's permissible under federal law because the U.S. government does it. And so what you would want to, the matrices that you'd want to compare is your outreach increasing the numbers? You could set a percentage for the participation on each contract, but you wouldn't be able to set an overall participation goal for the whole budget. It would have to be project by project, at least because that's the way the legislation is written. But you can evaluate the success of your outreach efforts and your inclusion efforts by looking and seeing if it increases over time. That's what colleges and school districts and community colleges, that's the matrices they use to see if they're getting a broader pool and they're actually reaching the people in their geographic area. So it can be done. It's just, if you use one matrices, it's in line with what the legal guidelines are, and if you use another matrices, then it could be vulnerable to attack. So you just use the one where you have the small business program, and then you do the outreach in your local area, and the people who are attending your schools and the families that are attending your schools are the ones that are getting the information, and those are the ones that would be participating.
Exactly what you said.
So, talking a little bit about local vendor engagement. So, again, there may be some restrictions regarding California law, but as she mentioned, there is some wiggle room around. We do have to keep it open and keep in mind that anything that we do is within scope. We must have, there are some limitations. For example, geographic preferences cannot be implemented for certain grant programs and certain federally funding projects such as EDGAR. This is usually for smaller dollar amounts that we use our EDGAR restrictions for, because usually when it's something that's bigger than $250,000, it automatically goes out to bid. But again, these are restrictions to certain funding sources. That does not mean that it's a hard no that we cannot do it.
And that was my question about the last part, that this is federal funded, but we have local funded also, like the bonds, like the, in the one, in the previous slide,
Yeah.
That is very clear on the last one. Geographic preference cannot be implemented based in federal funded project, like federal money. But my focus will be in what about the local money that the school district collects. Yeah, no.
So do we have any restrictions regarding bonds and awarding those to local vendors?
Well, the law generally permits the small businesses, but not a geographic limitation. And so what generally happens is that if you're doing the training and you're doing the outreach, you end up getting the people that are in your local area, because they're the ones that can participate, particularly if it's a small business and you have, like, in this area, you have already geographic sort of geographic barriers already, because of this is a place that's populated, and then you have a lot of spaces of rural area around it. So you are actually in beneficial position to do a small business program and have your local people benefit without calling it a local business preference. Some places will, for instance, you have a college that it's got the mountains on one side, the ocean on the other, and they're in between LA and Santa Barbara, and so they oftentimes get contractors, big construction contractors that'll come from LA, work on their project, and then go off and do other things, and they end up having problems with, with contractors staying and finishing out a project. What they do is they try and do a small business preference, so they have people on site that are going to be their local residents. The federal dollars don't allow geographic limitations because the pool of money comes from all over the country. But for the local ones, all you have to, you don't have you still can't really do the local because the only legislation that we have that allows there to be a preference is the small business. So we have to work with the set of laws we have. But you still end up, if you advertise in the same places that you do a lot of your parent outreach, you're still going to reach those families. There's a way to get there.
So I guess part of this is kind of talking about a little bit more about the next slide, is that we can have a support system without calling it a local support system. Because really what we want to do is we want to make it available to everybody, so anyone who theoretically from anybody wants to see it is able to see it. But at the same time, we can expand our outreach. And I was looking into this last year as well, because we can talk to local business organizations, we can talk to the city, the same Chamber of Commerce, community groups. If you have any contacts that you would like us to reach out to, we can do that. And so make that awareness be here on the local level, even though we're also advertising theoretically nationwide. And again, just this increased awareness, just like she said, it naturally turns into bid opportunities that people are aware of. They have a broader sense of like what we do here and what we're looking for. If we expand our communication efforts, the district where I was before, one of the ways we did this is that we found local newspapers. We found, I believe it was La Voz del Puerto. We found like little niche newspapers that maybe are in cultural places, and we advertise there as well. We encourage also our prime contractors that, consider local subcontracting. But again, it has to be a suggestion. It can't be a demand. So we can always say, there's benefits and say it on the benefits of what local contracting and what they can do. But again, all of it has to do with engagement and support and kind of presenting what's available and having other people come and take the opportunities. So, any questions?
There is case law that said that we can't use local. Well, there is case law that says that we can't use a geographic preference because the purpose of competitive bidding is to find the largest pool with the best price. And so I can't remember the case citation offhand, but I could find it for you. There was a case that said that you can't have a local geographic preference, but you can have a small business preference. So that's why we're using this structure, because that's what's available.
So number 5, what was requested is a prime contractor mentorship requirements. So encourage or require larger contractors to mentor and subcontract with small minority-owned and women-owned businesses as part of the district project participation. I set out essentially to look at what a mentorship program would look like. Unfortunately, it's one of those very complex situations because we can't mandate that a vendor mentor a smaller local contractor. It may conflict, it may create perception that we're favoring a vendor over the other. We can get complaints of unequal treatment, the same kind of protest that we've been hearing about all along. And it might also discourage participation of a vendor just because they don't want to deal with that program. So again, it hinders our ability to, as she mentioned, go out, find the best, find a competitive bid. And it may conflict with the fairness, the neutrality of the process. So That's not to say that we can't do anything.
I think it
Yeah.
said on there, encourage.
Yes,
So
yes,
there was two options on there to
yes.
not require, but encourage.
Yes,
So-
so that's what I focused on the encouragement of portion of it, because requirement gets us in a legal situation, but as we mentioned, we can encourage. So anything we do here, any kind of implementation that we do, we can drop that information on the vendors of saying like, these are the benefits of doing local. We encourage you to seek out local. But again, we just want to be cautious about making any of that mandatory or making it sound like if you don't do this, we won't give you the award. Because again, it gets us into that situation of then we're asking them to possibly even mentor their own competition.
But could we also incentivize?
You could follow this section and again, I'm going to refer back to section 2002 of the Public Contract Code. And if you guys want to take a look at it, it allows you to do a small business program and have a small business percentage. So that's the incentive. And that means that larger contractors will then look for a small business because it'll make their bid more competitive. It has withstood legal scrutiny, and it is part of the law. So that is permissible. But I think what Celine was mentioning when she said that you have to encourage is if a large contractor says, I made a good faith effort and I didn't find anyone that can do this particular work, then you can't exclude their bid. So the incentive is that you get your bid is considered like 5% lower. So that means if you're in a competitive bid, you're more competitive by 5%. That's the incentive. But you have to encourage the bidders and make the list of qualified subcontractors available so they could actually take advantage of it and so it could actually be implemented.
Yeah, so I guess that was what I was going to follow up and say, maybe if they can't find it, maybe it could be provided. Is there any way that it could be maybe some smaller contracts, some smaller businesses that could say, hey, we would, incentivize it or incentivize whatever percentage or whatever. But since you are a company and you probably don't have the time, here is a few list of businesses that we have that are available. Is that something that could be done?
Yeah, if there's small businesses that are already on your vendor lists, those are public record. So if you have qualified contractors that are already going for your smaller dollar amount contracts, and the larger contractor wants to subcontract, they can go and pull the names off of your qualified contract list.
So you couldn't just kind of help them and provide them with a list and say, hey, I know you probably don't have the time or whatever, but here's a list, and then send that to them?
Or you'd make it available. Like you'd say, in order to keep from the district telling contractors who to choose and, to avoid the appearance that you are actually involving yourself in their bid, you have the lists that are available and you say, hey, these lists are available on our website. Here's our contractors that are qualified under a certain amount. And so they could, when they're putting their bid together, they already do the estimation. They already go and look at bidders, and they'd be pulling it off of your website.
So is that something that we're already doing?
Yeah, the list of contractors is available on the website for anybody to go and take a look. We upload that, I believe, weekly.
But I meant,
So-
like, is it, letting
We
them know that
don't,
it's
we
available?
don't specifically tell the vendors, right now, we're not giving them any instructions. We're telling us, here's the project, give us your best estimate. So we are not currently telling them or insinuating or even suggesting, like, hey, here's the CUPCA list. We can work with legal and see if there's some kind of, information on how we should present that. Because again, as she mentioned, we don't want to appear like we're involving ourselves in how they're bidding or what they're bidding.
Yeah.
So there's a way to do it, more than likely, and it's just a matter of kind of nailing that down.
Ms. Brown, can you clarify what I think you're talking about when you say percentage, and maybe I'm way off base here, but because we can set up percentages and certain values on formal bidding for particular things. So when you say percentage, you're saying we can have like an allowable percentage for a small business. So if giving like a 5% bump or something like that for a small business in competitive bidding, is there a certain restriction on the amount of percentage you can do?
Yeah, on 202A subpart 1. Oh, sorry. In section 202 of the Public Contract Code, it defines what the responsive bidders. And in section A subpart 1, it says provide for a small business preference in construction, the procurement of goods, or the delivery of services where responsibility and quality are equal. And then it says the local agency shall set a percentage and financial value with a preference. The maximum percentage of a preference shall be 7% of the lowest responsible bidder meeting specifications, and the maximum financial value shall be $150,000. So the state legislature has given us a range. And as long as it's within that range, it can withstand a bid protest because that's the law.
Right. Okay. I was just wanting to clarify with the board here when we said percentage, what we were talking about.
Yeah, what I was saying you couldn't do is set a goal to have a certain number go to people that are from your community, because those would be considered a preference that doesn't have any support in any type of case law or any type of statutory law. But what you can do is follow this statute. And in federal bidding, you're allowed to use your local statutes in order. You have to follow your local competitive bidding rules. So if you use this small business statute, that would be permissible on a federally funded project because you're following your state guidelines for the procurement.
So that would be for small businesses bidding for a particular project, usually somewhat of a smaller project if there's only a $150,000 threshold for the 7%. But what about a larger bid that we would require them to use a subcontractor, let's just say an electrician. The electrician needs to be a subcontractor from a local area, and we provide them a list, and we say that is worth 5% on your bid process. Is that something that's possible as well?
Yeah, that's in this statute as well. On a big project, everything's like over a couple of million now. You can't like 30, 20, yes, crazies, but you can have a percentage in your large project, your huge construction project. You can have a small business subletting percentage, so they would get a bump in their bid. They'd be lower. On those, you generally have to look at what's feasible. And when I say that, I mean you look at what the components of your large construction project are and what could conceivably be subcontracted out. And then you set the percentage according to what you could subcontract out. So if you were going to do something that was like a very complicated, like a building like this that has all sorts of voice over IP data, and you have to have certain type of cabling in order to be integrated into the state system to take attendance and all that stuff, you have to, the specs have to be drawn so that you get what you need. It doesn't matter who's providing it, but they actually have to be able to meet the specs. As long as you set the percentages in accordance with what you think is reasonably likely to be able to be met, you're going to be successful. But you have to look at all the components of your project and be sure that you're setting a percentage where you're going to have members of your community that can do that thing.
And you'll have a competitive bid for it.
So we went over a lot of these things. So again, we can encourage outreach, mentorship. Again, keyword encourage. We can promote community engagement efforts through informational discussions, more of the outreach that we were talking about, possibly include more workshops. Again, facilitating network opportunities. A lot of these vendors only come out when we have bids. If the board would like, we could have network opportunities where we have an open house and we have the vendors come down and get to know our districts and the contractors here. And again, we can work with legal just to, like she mentioned, to set some thresholds, see what we can do to just kind of make that a little bit more honed and maybe allow, give an incentive for these larger contractors to subcontract locally. Okay. So the next one that was requested, or that was submitted, was number 5. Host a district-led vendor.
6.
I'm sorry, 6. Taking you back. Host a district-led vendor expo focused on small, minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, and local businesses, including procurement, matchmaking, training sessions, and contract forecasting. We can do this. I have been involved in CASBO, and we have created vendor shows for the local districts. I have participated in CAPO, and we've done the same here in Palm Springs Unified. We participated in the Coachella Valley Vendor Expo, where we met the local experts, and we had all the local cities and government agencies come down and provide workshops for the vendors, and then the vendors came and talked to our booths. So it is possible. It is a lot of work. So we do have, we're going to need coordination. If that's the directive of action of the board, we're going to need coordination on this. We're going to need staffing. We're going to need funding. We're going to need facilities. There needs to be coordination within the departments. We want to have engagement within the entire district, not just have purchasing lead the way, because a lot of these vendors contract directly with our departments, and the departments usually have an idea of what they want. So again, long-term sustainability is going to depend on participation and support. Again, I have 2 different models that I've created to present for the board. The first one is the Coachella Valley Vendor Show model, which is what we participated in this past year. It requires PSUSD departments to create and staff informational booths, and then the vendors come and visit each booth. If they have specific things that they would like to, I know that our technology department is probably going to get a lot of technology vendors. Our ELOP team is going to get a lot of, Lakeshore and people like that. But again, it's going to require substantial district-wide buy-in, because we want to have every single department at least have some kind of representation there, so that they can interact with the vendors and the vendors can essentially pitch to them, which is what they did to us at the Coachella Valley Vendor Show. And again, its operational demands includes planning, scheduling, training, setting up logistics, consistent department involvement. Having been in a committee that does this, it took us a year to put it together. So if we want to do this, it's going to take about a year to put everything together. The second model is the CASBO Vendor Show model. Vendors establish booths, so it's the other way around, not the departments, but the vendors are invited to set up a booth while PSUSD staff attend and engage with the exhibitors. Again, requires departmental and district-wide buy-in, because if there is no one to attend, then the vendors are just kind of sitting there unable to interact with us. It's going to involve coordination, vendor recruitment, facilities, scheduling, staff coverage, all of that. So it's doable, it's just going to require a lot of coordination.
Just real quick.
Yes.
And you don't have to go back, but the Coachella Valley Vendor Show, how many vendors were there? We were there, about how many others, and maybe about how many local, would you say?
The majority of them were the locals. I think there were just 2 of them that I interacted with that were not local, and that was Univision was there, and there was a tech company that was there. But the majority of them were small businesses, locals. They had, food trucks. They had, little incentives that they could create for us.
Did you get a lot of attendees?
We got a total of 120 people that signed up, because we had give us your information, sign up what you can provide. And so we created our local list of vendors. Like I said, it was 120. I don't know if we can use all of them, because again, we're very limited on the knowledge of what the teachers need. But when something comes through or someone comes and asks for resources, we have that resource list available for them. It would be completely different if we had someone from M&O there, someone from Ed Services team that they could say, this is exactly what I was looking for, let's get you set up. us being the third person, being the middleman, we're just kind of trying to see and provide resources to our staff and see if any of them are interested.
Now that
And
you've
that-
done it one time, isn't it maybe going to be simpler to do it again?
Oh, yeah, we're going to do it again, and I'm going to start roping other people to come with me because.
And that's what I was going to say, because there actually is an option number 3, is we continue to make this an annual event, and we continue to send more of our people over there, send people from M&O, send people from ELAP, send people from special ed, et cetera,
Yes.
the different departments
The
to
city
that
of Palm
particular
Springs had a
vendor
table
show,
for each
where
of
you
their
know that they've already
departments,
done all the recruitment, they've already done all the backbone work, if you will, and to get local vendors and whatnot there. So I think
And,
that's a good
yeah.
third option.
And part of the Coachella vendor show model is that they have a presentation, and so we provided some slides for them to present of like, these are our websites, this is how you sign up, if you have any questions here. So we provide about 10 minutes worth of information of like, if you are interested, this is how you sign up.
I would like to see us create one of the Coachella Valley vendor shows. And I would like for us to commit to at least 3 years, because I constantly hear from different leaders here in the district that it takes about 3 to 5 years in order for anything to take hold and to grow legs and to work. So I would like to see the Coachella Valley vendor show, but be here. I mean, it could get us an opportunity as well to get maybe possibly some of our family involved, use some of those outlets that she was speaking about to push some of the different social media platforms and different things like that to make our local businesses here aware of it. I think that if a year is what you need, I mean, I think that if we're really committed about making a difference, this is just me speaking, if we're committed about actually being intentional about this, I think that it's something that we should do here. It seems a little bit more friendly. It's more inviting. Joining someone else could be their own different situation, and we in here understand what we're trying to do as a district. And we don't necessarily have to be extremely creative and do something different than what they have a model that's in place. So we can mimic it and put our twist onto it and do what we need to do as a district to add on to it. And I think that it would be something that I would be supportive of. I don't know how the other board members feel.
So I did provide some information then on, considerations for either model. It does, having worked these shows, it does take time and it does take buy-in from multiple people. But if that's the direction that the board would like us to do, just provide some guidance.
I just want to maybe throw this idea out because there's a number of districts here in the Coachella Valley. Maybe it could be education-centered, including College of the Desert and, like you were saying, Meredith, other higher institutions that we could make it an educational-based type of event, more differentiated. What do you think?
I think that sounds great, but I think maybe the bigger it is, maybe the more coordination that it might require. I don't know if it's more, it takes her longer to get the process done, but that would be amazing to be able to get the contracts of all of the different districts that we have here in the Coachella Valley and be that center of that. I mean, that gives us an opportunity to set ourselves aside from any other district and give us the opportunity to say that we are one of the better districts, which we are.
Okay. So, public vendor participation dashboard. We currently do not have a system that captures all the demographics or certification data. I did want to put that out there because we would have to build something from scratch. We just do not have that data available right now. So any kind of public reporting has to comply with privacy laws. So if we use software, we just got to make sure that we have, our data software privacy laws. And it's going to be a public record. So again, we have to be able to pull that information and provide it at a moment's notice. And depending on what, is envisioned, the dashboard may require specific software, technology, or maybe a staff member to undermine, take on this resource, depending on essentially the guidance that we receive from the board. So again, right now, we currently can explore voluntary vendor self-identification processes. We don't have it currently in our vendor application. From the past year, we have started requesting this information for the past, I want to say, 4 months. So any new vendor that comes through is now able to select that in the vendor application, and we're able to get that information into Galaxy. So this is for new information. For returning vendors, we can, again, capture that data. Existing vendors, it's going to take us a while to grind through and make sure we have everyone tagged the way they're supposed to.
Celine, we have about 5 minutes, so
Oh,
if you
my
can kind of buzz through it.
Okay. So the next request was for a certification assistant program. I believe that provide support sessions for businesses seeking DVBE, women-owned or small businesses certification to increase eligibility for contract opportunities. So we have no control over that. I will say that we are not familiar with the process to acquire those. We can not influence the certification in any way, like we can't fill that out for them. That being said, if there's information that can be shared with the vendors, we will do that. We can research and say, hey, this is where you go. We can coordinate with educational workshops that the specific entities might be creating. But again, it's one of those that we don't really have control over that, so we don't really have the information for that.
And so I guess, quickly, as long as the information that is available can be provided, I don't know, maybe if there's something that we can outsource to have like some sort of a company to something that can kind of direct them on, kind of filling out that process and navigating that. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but, just, since we don't have the ability and don't have the manpower, it sounds like, to be able to do something like that, I think it would be beneficial if maybe possibly just give whatever information that we can to move that along.
So, yeah, I mean, it would be the equivalent of, here's a pamphlet, because we can't really influence it anyway. We can guide them to where they can, have the resources, but really we can't. We're not part of that process.
Okay.
I think your local small business association does those trainings. So having that maybe.
Yeah.
So maybe with that pamphlet that you're handing out, maybe you can say, hey, your small business associations or so on and so forth does this exact thing here in our local cities. Here are our city resources, and then send them that way.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly how it would work. So student-to-business pipeline integration, the request for this was connect CTE programs and student entrepreneurship initiatives with local business engagement opportunities to build long-term workforce and vendor pipelines. This one comes up to procurement laws. Again, we just got to make sure that we're not giving anybody preferential treatment, and it can't be tied back to we're preferring one person over the other just because they're a PSUSD student or an alum. So workforce development may extend beyond what we can provide. It goes into, again, one of those, we can guide them to where they are, but we can't really, unless we have a specific program that is in CTE creating this, we don't really have direct operational authority over that. Cross-departmental coordination and consultation with legal in case we do want to do that program is advised. But that being said, we can support any collaboration if a program does come along that CTE wants to implement. We can collaborate with them and, talk about student entrepreneurship initiatives. We can facilitate any educational exposure to public procurement. I know that our repro team has interns. We would be more than happy to have, interns that can come and, we can give them a little overview of what a bid is and just kind of talk to them that way. We can encourage vendor participation in career pathways, internships, or workforce development activities. We can tell them, it'd be really great, our students would like to do this. But again, it goes back to this is encouragement. It can't be mandatory. So we can have some kind of vendor outreach regarding that. And really, we would work with CTE to make sure it aligns with whatever program she's got going on. So number 10, community partnership, pre-qualification pool, establish pre-approved vendor pool for small purchases, events, and services to reduce barriers and streamline engagement with qualified community partners. We do a little bit of this, but again, our vendor pools all have to be competitive, all have to be transparent. Inclusion in that pool does not mean that the person is automatically going to get a contract award or going to get a sale. But yeah, we have developed some streamlined vendor registration processes. We have reached out to, like I said, we went to the Coachella Valley vendor affair because we did want to have some kind of working model of what a list like this would look like. We maintained updated vendor directories with approved vendor lists regularly. There are a lot of sites that request items from .com vendors. We like to divert those towards approved vendors that we know are vetted. A lot of times they're local, so we know that you're going to get everything when they need it. And again, we periodically refresh the vendor pools to make sure that everything is up to date. They have their tax information ready, and we're able to use them.
Are there any more questions from the board?
No,
Celine,
go ahead.
I just want to thank Celine
Yes.
and Meredith for all the information that you've given to the board. There's been lots of information, and hopefully the board can take this back and digest it, look over all the information you've given us in their notes, and then maybe come back at a later time. We'd like to come back at a later time with some recommendations and talk about this again. That sounds like something we can do?
And I want to also as well say thank you. You guys did a wonderful job. It's really refreshing to have representation here inside of the room to know what we can do and what we can't do. It's something that I think is just been needed, and I really enjoyed it. It was a pleasure. I would also like for us to consider and think about woven this into policy and creating something annually to where we are looking at this and we put something together as the next steps to see what we're going to do, if that's percentage-wise, or how we can measure this and how we can push it further and do what we need to do to make it better. I would like for us to look at that. It was something that I think that we need to do and revisit it every year, so it doesn't just sit there and become stale, and let everyone know that we're committed to this work. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I would just like to thank Celine and Ms. Brown for taking your time out of your day and coming down here and giving us a really clear understanding of our purchasing requirements. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you again. Since we're all finished now, we'll commence to